Luke Thomas at the American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose, California for the Bellator Dynamite 1 Open Workouts. It's a mouthful. Next to Bellator lightweight, now Josh Thomson. Josh, thank you for your time. So this is, I don't know, is it Chapter 2 with Scott Coker? Is it Chapter 1.5? How would you describe this return to services and working with him?
It's almost like 2.5. I fought for him for kickboxing, then I fought for him for Strikeforce MMA, and then now I'm back with him with Bellator. So to be honest, I mean, I couldn't be happier. Once the contract was signed and, friendships put aside and we were able to get the deal done, I mean, I was excited.
Were there any trepidations about you're walking into a division where maybe some people don't have as big a names? Because even when you're Strikeforce, you always had that Melendez there to sort of work off of. And there's some decent names, obviously, in Bellator, but maybe not to the same level as Strikeforce, not just yet anyway.
You have to remember that when we started Strikeforce, there was no big names. There was me and Gilbert and Frank and Kung. But to be honest, we weren't even big names at the time. So we built that division. We built our names based off of that company, off of Strikeforce. And people talk about these lightweights not being big names, but guess what? They've fought top-level competition. Chandler's fought, guys like Eddie Alvarez several times to beat him. And, as far as the other guys, Will Brooks has beaten Chandler, who has beaten Eddie. So, I mean, like, you start, I don't know, I don't want to do MMA math, but these guys are top-level guys. They obviously just, like in the Strikeforce days, weren't getting the respect that they deserve. And I've always said that about companies, about other fight promotions. These guys that are fighting other fight promotions, they're motivated, they're driven, they're ready to fight at all times, and that's what happened. That's what made Strikeforce so good. If you look at other organizations, look at guys like Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, Ronda Rousey. Those guys, those people are all successful because they all came from Strikeforce. So they were hungry to begin with. Another company just basically was able to piggyback off of what Strikeforce had built. Don't look at Bellator to do basically the same thing that they did with Strikeforce, build superstars. And it's just a matter of time before it happens.
Do you want Bellator to be what Strikeforce was, or are you looking to maybe chart a new path and something? I mean, look, you have kickboxing and MMA together. Already that's new. But what are you expecting out of Bellator to be?
If you guys remember, Strikeforce did a four-man tournament with the 185-pound division.
Not with this kind of bright lights, though.
No. But they also didn't do kickboxing side by side with it. So, but when you're trying to relate, what Scott Coker brings to the mix is he thinks outside the box. He's not like, okay, here's your 5 fights and this is it. This is all that's going to happen tonight. Fans are getting what they paid for tonight. On Saturday night. They're getting top level kickboxing fights. They're not just putting together like some slap stuff together. As far as kickboxing and saying, hey, these guys are fighting. They're putting top level kickboxers in the same arena as top level MMA fighters. So you can't go wrong. Whoever bought a ticket is in that arena, 16,000 people. They're going to be excited to see 2 different types of fights.
Did you get what you wanted out of your second run in the UFC? I mean, your first run in the UFC is sort of legendary because you and Eves put on one of the best fights ever, and then it got closed down, and they brought it back, and then you were in Strikeforce, and had this sort of weird undulating path. Now that it's all said and done with, and you've got a next chapter ahead of you, of course, but when you look back, was it what you wanted it to be?
I mean, I never try to look back and what happened. Like everyone talks about, other fights that I've had in the past, like, oh, if you would have done this, you would have done that. But you can't move forward if you keep looking back. So I'm excited to be here in Bellator. I'm excited to be fighting on a card that's never been done before. You have Dynamite, you have kickboxing, you've got Glory Kickboxing, you got Bellator all in the same arena. You can't. I'm being part of something, especially in my hometown, that's never been done before, in the fight industry. So what better chance do I have to make a bigger name for myself than I already am right here in my hometown?
Let's talk about what's happened since the Ferguson fight. You walked out there with some cuts, of course, but how were you physically besides that after the fact? And I guess talk to me about, like, the Ferguson fight finishes, you heal up, you sign the new contract, you start training. Has it been a little bit, I don't know, what's the word, expedited to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, when I started doing negotiations with Bellator, I was like, hey, the one thing, once I sign this contract, I want to make sure that I try to get on this card. And then Scott said, well, we're about 5 weeks, 6 weeks out. It's going to be hard to find you an opponent. I said, well, look, do whatever you can. I asked for certain guys, in the organization.
So you requested this?
Yes, I requested this. There was no doubt about it. I mean, realistically, once I had a couple of the stitches taken out, I started training that week. I tried to avoid contact for an extra week, but then I was ready to go right after that. So I just started training physically right after that, knowing hopefully was thinking that the contract was going to get done with Bellator, and we had a couple little things that we had to work on and put our friendships aside, between me and Scott, and we did business for a little bit, and it worked out great, and I'm excited to be part of this show.
Physically, you're in a different chapter in your career. You still look great, still training, but are you training different now? Because injuries were a big part of your career for a long time, but it seems like it was a shorter camp, but it seems like it was, from what I can tell, relatively smooth. So are things different now here at AK in terms of how you approach the fight?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, things have been different for the last couple of fights. I've kind of approached how I train a little bit differently. Sometimes taking a day off in the middle of the week and then training on Saturdays, a little bit more intense on Saturdays, then taking Sunday off. But I've done a lot of talking, a lot of work with some other trainers like Victor Conte, guys like that, on how Olympic athletes train. They train hard for 2 days, take a day off, train hard for 2 days, take a day off, or do like an active recovery day. Also, just little things like salt loading in the morning help recover your muscles. Little things like that make a big difference. Not to mention, in the beginning, back when I was younger, 28, 29, 30 years old, I really wasn't drinking any water. I mean, I was drinking maybe like a little small 8-ounce bottle of water a day, and that was it. The rest of it was like orange juice or protein shakes, and just thinking that was good enough, and it wasn't. So now physically, I mean, probably for the last year and a half, I've been drinking maybe a little bit longer, about a gallon and a half a day.
That's crazy to hear that you weren't actually doing like basic nutrition, right? That's what that was.
Yeah, and realistically, what it is, I hate the taste of water.
You're the second athlete who's told me that. The only other one is John Daly, the golfer.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, what it is like I don't mind drinking it when I'm training, but outside of training, I don't want water. I never. Someone gives me a bottle of water, I just throw it on the ground. I'm like, no thanks, I'm good. Yeah, but I mean, now, obviously, as I get older, I've realized the importance of it. I've noticed a big difference in my body physically when I'm training, especially when I salt load in the morning, then I drink water throughout the day. You got to remember that your body, your muscles need water to recover, and without that, they can't really recover. So then you feel run down.
2 quick questions for you. How did you get hooked up with Victor Conte?
I was actually going through the problem of I thought I had like low testosterone levels. I couldn't figure out why. I was basically running out of gas in the middle of training. When I just told you why, is I wasn't salt loading, I wasn't drinking any water. So I mean, literally just like maybe a little 8-ounce bottle of water a day at the most. Whatever I could get out of the fountain in between minute breaks, of training. So that made such a huge difference when I talked to him. And then I was like, kind of some of my joints were having some problems, so he referred me to taking little copper pills, which helped a lot as well. And those are things that I'd never heard of. And just those little conversations that I had with him, and then back and forth, he put me on his. He's got a supplement line called Snack. He put me on that, and ever since then, I've had nothing but success.
And then last question for you. I appreciate your time. So you're the guy who's had the name, who's coming into Bellator. You're taking on Mike Bronzoulis, who I think is a known competitor, a credentialed one. But you're the guy with a huge name, and you're in San Jose. So there must be a bit of a concern here. You said to a previous reporter, all I got to do is win. Is that true? Because I think people have some extraordinarily high expectations of you. Are you worried about that heading into this fight?
No, not at all. I think people can have all the expectations they want, but if he goes up there and throws a kick and slips and bumps his head and knocks himself out, I could care less. A win's a win to me. So, and just from the bottom of my heart, really, that's what it comes down to. I'm more concerned about the next steps, next phases of what's going to happen. I need to get the win, though, for that to happen. So it doesn't matter how it all happens. If I go out there, throw a punch, and he drops, then that's great. If I go out there and get a submission, and that's great. I'll take the win any way I can get it right now, and just want to focus on getting the win.
Josh, best of luck to you, and thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, man.